Let's go in depth tonight. Congressman Chris Stewart joining us live here now on 2 News Live. Congressman, as always, it is great to speak with you. First and foremost, you announced your intent to retire from Congress. How are you processing this decision tonight, and how is your family doing?
Well, thank you for asking. I have health concerns with my wife. She had a stroke about a year ago, and it's just made it difficult for me to be gone all of the time, and reached a point where it really wasn't fair to her for me to continue to ask her to do that. My family has sacrificed so much for so many years, as I've spent time here in Congress and then previous to that in the military. And it's with a real heavy heart and a lot of disappointment that I leave. I didn't want to leave Congress. I certainly didn't want to leave in the middle of a session. But at the same time, we're optimistic about our future. Let's take care of our first priorities, which is our family. And then we'll hopefully find ways we can contribute and continue to serve, and especially this really critical time in our nation's history. But, it's okay. We accept the curveballs that life throws us, and you have faith and you move forward.
Well, of course, we're hopeful for good health for your family in the future. You were elected into the House of Representatives back in 2012. So any unfinished business on behalf of Utahns that you'd like to see through?
Oh my gosh, there's so much unfinished business, which is, of course, why it's hard to leave. I think that I'd like to do one or two things before we leave. Number one is I didn't know that I would become involved with emotional health, with mental health, with suicide prevention. Of course, being the person who wrote the legislation on the federal side to create the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, the 988 number. But there's more work to do there. The thing that I would like to do is legislation that would preclude children younger than 16 from being able to sign up and have social media accounts. The correlation between social media engagement and depression and anxiety and suicide among our young people is just indisputable. And we're going to have so many happier children, happier young people, if we can curtail their involvement with social media for a few years later than they are right now. Again, it's a bit of a challenge, but it's bipartisan. We have support from Democrats, even from the White House. I would love to complete that work before I leave Congress.
Of course, when you do leave, we're trying to find a good fit to represent the district with an upcoming election. You've endorsed Celeste Malloy, who serves as Chief Legal Counsel for your office. Why did you throw your endorsement behind Celeste Malloy?
Well, and I have to be careful in answering that question because, I'm representing in an official capacity tonight, and I can't, comment on active campaigns because of that. And I'll just simply say there's a lot of great people in the race. I think some of them would be extraordinary congressmen. I really do. I think Celeste is among those who would be a great person to represent the 2nd Congressional District.
Well, Congressman, some activity just this afternoon. You, along with our Utah delegation, voted on a resolution which passed on to a committee to impeach President Joe Biden over his handling of the U.S. border with Mexico. Why did you vote this way, and why is this moving forward to committee?
Well, look, President Biden's leadership is about far more than just the southern border. But they've been completely derelict in a fundamental responsibility of the federal government, that is to secure our borders, to secure our national security. And there's no question the southern border is just absolute chaos. It's a human rights catastrophe with literally hundreds of thousands of examples of young children, young girls, and women being trafficked across the border as just one example. But one of the things I objected to with the Democrats and their impeachment proceedings was they weren't careful. They weren't thoughtful. They didn't give any actually investigative effort. I mean, for heaven's sakes, the second impeachment, they took place in about 10 days. I think that's a mistake. If you think the President of the United States has done something that's actually impeachable, you should go through a very thoughtful, thorough process to do that. And we haven't done that yet. And so the appropriate response is, well, refer it to the committee, let them complete their investigation, as they've been working on for months now. But we shouldn't be in a position where just the opposite party always impeaches the president. It's a terrible precedent for our country. On the other hand, if there are things there that are very troubling, like there clearly is regarding allegations of actual bribery with the president and his son, those should be investigated. And we should do that. We are doing that. And we'll see where those investigations lead.
To another topic of investigation regarding Special Counsel John Durham. What do you make of his testimony and his report that was released in May about the FBI's investigation into both Russia and Donald Trump.
Well, and what Mr. Durham did, and I had a chance to visit with him this week, and of course he was before another committee here on Congress. What he did was actually verify what some of us have been saying for 4 or 5 or 6 years. Those of us on the Intelligence Committee who were involved with the Russian investigation beginning in 2016, we came out, we said, the FBI lied to the FISA courts. The FBI has deceived the American people. The Department of Justice, or our Democratic colleagues like Adam Schiff, for example, they're deceived the American people. And then it moved and actually grew, our concerns grew from there. Well, Mr. Durham, after his many-year investigation, has concluded that's exactly right. And now the question is, well, what do we do with that? What reforms can we implement at the FBI where they can begin to regain a trust of the American people? For heaven's sakes, I'm a conservative. I'm a former military officer. I'm someone who supports our men in blue. But I represent a lot of Americans who look at the FBI leadership now. And I want to be careful because the rank and file FBI agents, complete trust in them. Every one of them are trying to do a great job, I think. But their leadership has betrayed them over the last few years, and many of them feel that way. And we need to look, as Mr. Durham clearly indicated, we need to look at some of the practices, some of the culture within the FBI that comes from their very senior leadership, and just simply demand they do better. You should not politicize an agency as powerful as the FBI is.
Congressman Chris Stewart with us here on 2 News Live. Congressman, I saw you talk about this on social media a few weeks ago, but what do you make of the situation right now as it stands with former President Donald Trump, who intends to run again for president?
Yeah. Well, again, the precedent that is set here, where we've got a sitting president who is indicted and is seeking actually to jail and to punish his political rival, it should deeply trouble people. Now, everyone says, well, the former president shouldn't be above the law. I agree with that. But he shouldn't be below the law either. And here's something that just is factually true. Every president since Reagan has had classified documents in their possession, including the current president, President Biden, as we know. And I just think we should be very consistent in how we apply the law. And if President Trump finds himself under indictment for this, I don't know how you can say that's appropriate. And then on the other hand, say, but we're not going to do the same thing for our sitting president. Once again, I just think it's a dangerous precedent to say and to open this up to the political maneuvering that could come from a president pushing the indictment of a former president for something like this.
Well, Hunter Biden will plead guilty to 2 tax misdemeanors and intends to strike a deal for a felony gun charge. Thoughts on this and how it will impact the upcoming presidential race?
Once again, I mean, I just hate to say this, but once again, it falls into this view that so many people have that there's a 2-tiered system, that if you're on Team A, that you're going to be treated lightly. Hillary Clinton wasn't indicted for her classified information she kept on a server. That Hunter Biden is treated differently for a weapons charge, and literally thousands of African-American young men are in jail right now for gun charges very similar to what Hunter Biden got, essentially no punishment at all. And it makes people feel like, well, if you're one of the elites, if you're from a powerful family, you're treated differently than the rest of us would be. One other thing on that, and that is there's continued investigation. Hunter Biden and the Biden family has clearly got to answer some questions. And for example, if there's nothing at all to these charges, that they actually accepted $10 million in money from foreign entities, then they could clear that up very easily. They could release the FBI forms, demand that the FBI 1023s are released. That would answer that question. But instead, they're holding them back. They're protecting themselves, and it makes people wonder, well, what is actually in that information, and why won't the FBI show the American people?
Well, finally, Congressman, you've been at this for a while now, more than a decade. We talked about your unfinished business, but what would you say some of your greatest accomplishments serving Utah's 2nd District are while spending your time in Washington?
Well, thank you for the question. I mean, I want to be careful in that. I think we've worked really hard for the people in Utah, and I think that's one of the proudest things that I can say is we worked so hard. I think the work we did on the Intelligence Committee was critical. For example, realizing early that Russia was going to invade Ukraine, We were able to help prepare the battlefield to begin to send them arms and munitions before the invasion actually took place. 988, the national suicide prevention number, is something I'm very, very proud of. It has literally already saved tens of thousands of lives. But mostly it's coming back to what did we do for our constituents? What did we do for people back home? And I think we have a reputation of working really, really hard for Utah. I think that's probably the thing I'm most proud of.
Always so gracious with your time. Thank you so much for Congressman Stewart for joining us here on 2 News Live. Thank you for your service to our country, both in uniform and in D.C. on behalf of the state of Utah. It's always great to speak with you.
Thank you so much. You're very kind. Thank you.
Hope to talk to you soon. If you missed any part of it, we will post this entire interview on our YouTube page after the show tonight. Just search KUTV 2 News Salt Lake City on our YouTube channel to see the clip. It'll also be on our website, KUTV.com, as well.